The rain came down like judgment against the glass walls of Thorn Tower. Each drop was a tiny accusation that Julian couldn't quite name. 47 floors below, the city of Vanguard sprawled in ribbons of light and shadow, its millions of lives unfolding in apartments and bars and late-night diners, while he sat alone in the dark, watching the clock inch toward midnight. 11:47 p.m., 13 minutes until his birthday ended. 3 years to the day since Clara stopped breathing in that hospital room, her hand growing cold in his, while machines beat their useless protests against the inevitable. Julian Thorne lifted the glass of amber noir to his lips. The 30-year whiskey burned a familiar path down his throat. The bottle was nearly empty now. He had started drinking at 7, right after signing the termination papers for 512 employees. Marcus had called it strategic restructuring. The business press would call it decisive leadership. Julian called it what it was, destroying 500,000 lives because the quarterly projections demanded sacrifice. The penthouse office stretched around him like a mausoleum of success. Italian marble floors that cost more than most people's homes. A Rothko original on the north wall, its red and black depths seeming to pulse in the dim light. Floor-to-ceiling windows that transformed the city into a glittering toy. Something to be owned and observed, but never touched. He caught his reflection in the glass and didn't recognize the man staring back. When had his eyes grown so hollow? When had the silver started creeping into his temples like early frost? Clara used to run her fingers through his hair and tease him about going distinguished. Now he just looked tired and old and utterly, completely alone. His phone sat on the desk, its screen dark. There had been birthday messages, of course, automated ones from the PR team, strategically timed social media posts, a formal email from the board of directors. Marcus had even sent a bottle of champagne with a card that read, "To many more years of profitable partnership." The champagne sat unopened on the sideboard. The thought of celebrating anything made Julian's stomach turn. He stood suddenly, unable to bear the silence any longer, and walked to the antique cabinet in the corner of the room. Inside, hidden behind a false panel, sat something that didn't belong in this temple of modernity. An old rotary telephone, its black Bakelite body worn smooth by decades of hands. It had belonged to his grandfather, then his father, and now it sat here like a relic from another age. No internet connection, no digital footprint, no way for the algorithms that tracked his every move to log another data point. Julian lifted the receiver. The dial tone hummed in his ear, a sound from his childhood, from before the world became a maze of screens and surveillance and strategic communications. He didn't know why he still paid to maintain Clara's old phone line. The grief counselor had told him it was unhealthy, this refusal to let go. Marcus had called it sentimental weakness. But some part of Julian needed to know that the number still existed, that somewhere in the vast network of the world, there was still a line that connected to her memory. He dialed 40478-23159. The connection clicked and hummed. Static whispered through the old receiver like distant ghosts. 4 floors below street level, in the bowels of Thorn Tower where the air hung cold and dry, Elena Vance sat surrounded by the soft blue glow of server racks. The Data Preservation Center, that was the official name, though everyone just called it the basement, stretched around her in orderly rows of humming machines, each one housing terabytes of corporate memory. Old contracts, archived emails, defunct project files, financial records too ancient to matter, but too important to delete. Elena was the only person who actually understood this place. For 3 years, she had served as the keeper of digital ghosts, cataloging and organizing the forgotten data of Thorn Industries, while the company charged forward into an ever more connected future. Her official title was Legacy Systems Administrator. Her unofficial role was being invisible. She didn't mind. Invisibility had its advantages. The small desk in the corner of Server Room 7 had become her sanctuary. A space heater fought against the climate control, creating a bubble of warmth in the refrigerated air. Her coffee had gone cold hours ago, but she hadn't noticed. She was deep in a routine maintenance check, her eyes scanning lines of code while her mind wandered to places it shouldn't go. On the corner of her desk, half hidden behind a stack of technical manuals, sat a photograph in a simple silver frame. It showed the lobby of Thorn Tower 3 years ago during some corporate event she barely remembered. In the background, slightly out of focus, Julian Thorne stood talking to a group of investors. His wife Clara was beside him, radiant in a blue dress, her hand resting on his arm with casual intimacy. Elena hadn't meant to take the photo. She'd been testing a new camera for the security team. Just another invisible task for the invisible woman, and Julian had walked into frame. She'd kept the image because of the way he looked at Clara, like she was the only real thing in a room full of performance. That was the day Elena had fallen in love with a man who didn't know she existed. 3 years, 1,095 days, of watching him from across crowded rooms, of memorizing the way he took his coffee, black, no sugar, of learning the subtle shifts in his posture that meant he was angry or tired or pretending to be fine when he wasn't. 3 years of loving someone who had never once looked directly at her face. She tried to stop. She told herself it was pathetic, a crush better suited to a teenager than a 31-year-old woman with 2 engineering degrees. She'd gone on dates with perfectly nice men who had perfectly acceptable jobs and wanted perfectly ordinary things. But none of them had ever made her feel the way Julian did when he walked into a room she occupied. That electric awareness, that flutter beneath her ribs, that desperate hope that maybe, just maybe, today would be the day he saw her. It never was. A light on the legacy console flickered red, pulling Elena from her thoughts. She frowned, setting down her coffee cup. The indicator showed incoming traffic on the old internal phone system, a relic from the building's original construction that no one had bothered to decommission. Most employees didn't even know it existed. Elena maintained it out of professional habit, a backup communication channel that operated independently of the digital network. Who would be using an internal analog line at this hour? She plugged her diagnostic headset into the test port, expecting to hear nothing but static. Equipment glitch, probably a short in the old wiring. Instead, she heard breathing, ragged, uneven, the breath of someone trying not to cry. Then a voice, Julian's voice, broken in ways she had never heard it broken before. Clara, I know you're not there. I know this is just... God, I don't know what this is. A deadline, a voice that will never answer. But I don't have anyone else to talk to, and I'm so fucking tired of pretending. Elena's hand froze on the disconnect switch. Every professional instinct screamed at her to end the call, to file an incident report, to pretend she had never heard the CEO of Thorne Industries unraveling in real time. But she didn't move. I fired 500 people today, Julian continued, his words slightly slurred from whiskey but painfully clear in their meaning. 500. Marcus said it was necessary. Quarterly projections, shareholder confidence, all the words that sound so important in boardrooms and mean nothing at all to the families I just destroyed. The sound of liquid being poured, a swallow, a sigh that seemed to come from somewhere deep and wounded. You would have hated me for that, Clara. You always said I was better than the numbers. You always believed I could be more than just another corporate machine. A bitter laugh. Shows what you knew. Look at me now, sitting alone on my birthday talking to a dead phone line, because I don't have a single person in my life who actually knows me. The real me. Not Julian Thorne the billionaire, not the CEO, just me. Elena realized she was crying. Tears tracked silently down her cheeks, and she didn't bother to wipe them away. Marcus thinks I'm weak. Maybe he's right. I used to know who I was. I used to believe in something. Now I go through the motions. I sign the papers. I make the decisions that hurt people because that's what's expected of me. And every night I come home to this empty glass cage, and I wonder what the hell any of it is for. His voice dropped to a whisper, so quiet she had to strain to hear it. I miss you, Clara. God, I miss you so much that some nights I can barely breathe. You were the only person who ever saw past all of this. The money, the power, the bullshit. You saw me, and now you're gone, and I don't know who I am anymore. The line went quiet except for the soft static of old circuits. Then so softly it was almost to himself. Happy birthday, Julian. Happy fucking birthday to the loneliest man in the world. The click of a receiver being set down, the line went dead. Elena sat motionless in the blue glow of the servers, her headset still pressed to her ear, her heart hammering against her ribs. She should file a report. She should pretend this never happened. She should be professional and invisible and safe. But the sound of his voice, that raw, shattered honesty, had reached something inside her that 3 years of silent loving had never touched. Before she could stop herself, before logic or fear or common sense could intervene, she reached for the legacy switchboard and dialed back. The phone rang once, twice, then Julian's voice, sharp with surprise. "Hello? Who is this?" Elena's throat closed. She couldn't speak. What was she supposed to say? "I'm the woman who's loved you from the shadows for 3 years. I'm nobody, a ghost in your basement, but I heard your pain and I couldn't bear it." She fumbled for the audio processor on her desk, a piece of equipment she'd modified for testing voice encryption systems. A few quick adjustments and her voice would be unrecognizable, disguised, safe. She pressed the transmit button. "You're not alone, Julian." Silence on the other end, then the sound of something glass shattering against hard floor. "Who the hell is this?" His voice cracked between anger and desperate hope. "Clara, is this... How did you..." "I'm not Clara." Elena kept her voice steady, modulated through the filter into something lower, warmer, unplaceable. "I'm someone who knows what it feels like to be invisible in a room full of people. I'm someone who heard what you said just now, and I couldn't let you go to sleep believing you're alone in the world." "This is impossible," Julian breathed. "No one has this number. No one even knows this phone exists. The universe has a strange sense of timing." "Who are you?" Elena closed her eyes. The truth sat heavy on her tongue, impossible to speak. "Someone who sees you, Julian, not the CEO, not the name on the building. You, and I think Clara would want you to know that the man you're afraid of becoming isn't who you really are. He's just who you've had to be to survive the last 3 years." The silence stretched between them, filled with the soft static of the old phone line and the distant hum of servers. "How do you know anything about Clara?" "Everyone in this city knows about Clara Thorne. The foundation she built, the medical research she funded, the children's hospital that carries her name." Elena paused, choosing her words carefully. "But I also know that she fell in love with a man, not a corporation, and that man is still in there somewhere, fighting to remember who he used to be." Julian's breath caught. I don't know what to say." "You don't have to say anything. Just know that tomorrow, when the sun comes up, when you have to put the mask back on and be the person the world expects you to be, someone out there knows the truth. Someone sees you." More silence. Then so quietly she almost missed it. "Will you call again?" Elena's heart twisted in her chest. "If you want me to." "I don't even know your name." She smiled despite herself, despite the impossibility of everything about this moment. "You can call me Echo. Now go to sleep, Julian. Tomorrow will be hard, but you'll get through it. You always do." She disconnected the call before he could respond. In the penthouse 47 floors above, Julian Thorne stood in the darkness, surrounded by broken glass and the lingering scent of expensive whiskey, and felt something he hadn't felt in 3 years. Hope. The morning arrived gray and reluctant, the kind of Seattle dawn that couldn't quite commit to being day. Elena had slept for 2 hours, maybe 3. Her dreams were a confused tangle of server codes and Julian's voice and the impossible things she had done. She'd broken every rule, intercepted a private call, established unauthorized contact with the CEO, used company equipment for personal purposes. If anyone found out, she wouldn't just lose her job, she'd probably face criminal charges. And yet, when she replayed the conversation in her mind, she couldn't regret it. The sound of his voice when she told him he wasn't alone. The way the desperation had softened just slightly into something that sounded almost like relief. For one moment, she had been more than invisible. She had mattered to someone who didn't even know her name. Elena arrived at Thorne Tower at 7:15, the same as every day. She badged through the security checkpoint, rode the elevator down to the basement levels, and settled into her desk with a cup of coffee and a growing sense of dread. Any minute now, security would come for her. Julian would have traced the call. The audit logs would show her access to the legacy system. It was over. But the minutes ticked by, and no one came. At 8:30, she checked the system logs herself. The call record was gone, automatically purged during the nightly maintenance cycle she'd set up 3 years ago. A routine process she'd never thought twice about was now the only thing standing between her and disaster. At 9:15, an all-hands email announced that Julian Thorne would be addressing the company at noon regarding the previous day's restructuring. The tone was formal, almost cold. Business as usual. Elena tried to focus on her work, but her mind kept drifting to the image of Julian in the penthouse, alone in the dark, talking to a phone that wasn't supposed to answer. At 11:42, a message appeared on her screen. Not an email, a direct system notification, the kind that bypassed normal channels and appeared only to users with administrator access. From unknown Julian Thorne, subject Echo. I had my team trace that call. They found nothing. No logs, no records, no evidence that anyone intercepted my line last night. Either you don't exist, or you're very good at not being found. I don't know what I believe. Maybe I drank too much and imagined the whole thing. Maybe I'm finally losing my mind the way Marcus has been suggesting to the board for months. But just in case you're real, thank you. I went to sleep last night without wanting to disappear for the first time in 3 years. That has to mean something. If you can see this, respond somehow. Leave a message. Give me a sign. I won't try to find you if you don't want to be found. I just need to know I'm not going crazy. Jay. Elena stared at the message until the words blurred. He was reaching out to her, looking for her in the only place she could be found, the digital infrastructure that no one else understood. Her fingers hovered over the keyboard. Every rational part of her brain screamed not to respond. Every professional instinct warned her to delete the message and pretend it never existed. But she thought of his voice in the darkness. She thought of 3 years of loving someone from the shadows. She thought of what it would mean to finally, impossibly, be seen. She typed her response. You're not going crazy. Don't look for me. Not because I'm hiding something dangerous, but because what exists between us right now, this strange connection, only works if it stays pure. No names, no faces, no expectations. Let me be your echo, someone who reflects back the truth you've forgotten about yourself. Tonight, same time, same line, if you still want to talk. She sent it before she could change her mind. The reply came 90 seconds later. I'll be there. The days that followed fell into a rhythm that Elena had never imagined and couldn't entirely explain. Every night at 11:30, she would make her way to the basement server room. Every night, Julian would call the old analog line, and for hours that stretched toward dawn, they would talk. At first, it was about Clara. Julian needed to speak about her, and Elena needed to understand the woman she had only seen from a distance. Clara had been brilliant, passionate, idealistic. She'd built a Thorne Foundation from nothing, channeling her husband's wealth into medical research and education and causes that actually mattered. She'd been the conscience of the company, the voice that reminded Julian why success mattered only if it served something larger. She would have stopped me from firing those people, Julian said one night, his voice thick with regret. She always knew when I was making decisions from fear instead of vision. But without her, I don't trust my own judgment anymore. Maybe that's the problem, Elena replied through her voice filter. You've been so afraid of making the wrong choice that you've stopped making choices at all. You let Marcus and the board drive while you just go through the motions. A long pause. How do you know about Marcus? Elena's heart stuttered. She'd slipped, revealing knowledge that an outsider shouldn't have. Everyone in corporate America knows Marcus Sterling. His reputation precedes him. And what reputation is that? A man who knows how to make the numbers work. A man who believes the only thing that matters is the bottom line. She hesitated, then added, a man who would cut out his own heart if it improved quarterly earnings. Julian laughed. A real laugh, the first she ever heard from him. You might be the first person who's ever described Marcus that accurately. The board thinks he's a genius. The board isn't having conversations at midnight with a stranger on an antique phone line. No, Julian agreed softly, they're not. The conversations evolved. Business strategy gave way to philosophy, then literature, then the small absurdities of daily life. Julian discovered that Echo had a sharp wit in an engineer's mind, able to dissect complex problems with elegant precision. Elena discovered that beneath the corporate mask, Julian was curious, thoughtful, haunted by questions that had no easy answers. He started asking her advice about company decisions, small things at first, how to phrase a difficult message, whether to approve a particular initiative. But gradually, the questions grew larger. Marcus wants to acquire a biotech startup, Julian said one night, 3 weeks into their strange communion. The financials look good, but something feels wrong. I can't put my finger on it. What's the company's primary product? A new cancer drug, still in clinical trials, but the early results are promising. Elena pulled up the information on her secondary monitor, scanning the data with practiced eyes. It took her less than 5 minutes to find the discrepancy. The trial data had been manipulated, she said carefully. The sample sizes reported to investors don't match the clinical registrations. Someone inflated the success rates. Silence. Then how the hell do you know that? I have access to databases that most people don't know exist. Which was true, Elena maintained, connections to academic research networks and government regulatory systems as part of her legitimate work. Julian, this acquisition would be a disaster. If the fraud comes out after Thorne Industries buys, you'll be holding the bag. Marcus assured me his team vetted everything. Marcus's team missed it, or didn't look, or... She stopped herself. She'd been about to say something she couldn't take back. Or what? Nothing, I'm overstepping. Echo. His voice was firm now, the voice of a man who had built an empire. Tell me. Elena closed her eyes. Or Marcus knows exactly what he's doing, and he's setting you up to take the fall. The silence that followed was different from their usual comfortable pauses. This was the silence of a man whose world had just shifted beneath his feet. That's a serious accusation. I know, and I have no proof. At least nothing I can share without revealing how I know what I know. But Julian, you asked me what felt wrong about this deal. That's my answer. Something is wrong with Marcus. Something has been wrong for a long time. She could hear him breathing on the other end of the line, thinking, processing. I'll look into it, he finally said quietly, without telling Marcus. Be careful. If I'm right, he won't hesitate to destroy you to protect himself. And if I'm wrong, then I'm a paranoid conspiracy theorist talking to a billionaire at 1 o'clock in the morning, and you should probably stop taking my calls. Another laugh, warmer this time. I think we're past that point, Echo. The elevator encounter happened on a Thursday. Elena had needed to access a legacy file on the 43rd floor, a routine retrieval that should have taken 5 minutes. She timed her visit for mid-afternoon when the executive floors were typically quiet. Julian safely sequestered in meetings she'd noted on his public calendar. But the meetings had ended early. The elevator doors opened and Julian stepped in, his phone pressed to his ear, his expression tight with barely contained frustration. I don't care what the projections say, Marcus. The numbers don't feel right, and I want a full audit before we proceed. Julian paused, listening to whatever Marcus was saying on the other end. No, this isn't open for debate. I'm the CEO, and I'm telling you to hold the acquisition. If you have a problem with that, we can discuss it with the board. He jabbed the call-in button and let out a sharp breath. Only then did he seem to register that he wasn't alone. Elena kept her eyes down, praying he wouldn't look too closely. She was just another employee, indistinguishable from the hundreds who moved through this building every day. The invisible woman. Sorry, Julian muttered, not quite looking at her. Bad meeting. It's fine, Elena said, keeping her voice flat and professional. No trace of the warm tone she used as echo. The elevator descended in silence. 10 floors, 20. The air felt thick, charged with something Elena couldn't name. She was acutely aware of every detail. The subtle cologne he wore, the way his jaw tightened when he was stressed, the small scar near his left eyebrow that she'd never noticed from a distance. On floor 32, Julian's phone buzzed again. He reached into his pocket to check it, and his pen slipped from between his fingers, clattering to the floor. Elena bent to retrieve it without thinking. Her fingers closed around cold metal, a vintage fountain pen, clearly expensive, clearly cherished. As she straightened and held it out, their hands touched. Julian's eyes met hers. For one terrifying moment, Elena felt certain he knew. The connection sparked between them, electric and undeniable. His gaze sharpened, searching her face as if trying to recall a memory just out of reach. Thank you, he said slowly, taking the pen. It's beautiful. The words escaped before she could stop them. Mont Blanc, right? The Meisterstück line. My grandfather had one similar. Julian's eyebrows rose slightly. Not many people recognize it. It was a gift, wasn't it? Elena was playing with fire now, but she couldn't seem to stop. From someone important. His expression flickered. Surprise, pain, something softer. My wife. Our first anniversary. She had good taste. The elevator chimed. Lobby floor. Wait, Julian said as Elena moved toward the doors. I don't think we've met. What department are you in? Legacy systems. She kept her voice casual, detached. I maintain the old archives. Things nobody remembers exist. Clearly, I should pay more attention to things nobody remembers. He offered a small smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. I'm Julian. I know who you are, Mr. Thorne. She stepped through the doors. Everyone does. She was 3 steps into the lobby when he called after her. It's supposed to rain tonight. Make sure you have an umbrella. Elena froze. Those words, she'd said almost exactly those words to him last night as echo when he mentioned having early meetings. She forced herself to keep walking, forced her face to remain neutral, forced her heart to stop trying to escape through her throat. When she reached the safety of the stairwell, she pressed her back against the wall and let herself shake. He was starting to suspect. Somehow, impossibly, he was beginning to connect Echo to the invisible woman in his elevator. She had to be more careful. She had to create more distance, more separation between her two selves. But when night came and the phone rang at 11:30, she answered anyway. I met someone interesting today, Julian said, his voice thoughtful in the darkness. Elena's fingers tightened on the receiver. Oh? A woman from the archives department. I've never seen her before, which is strange. I like to think I know most of the faces in this building. You run a company with 3,000 employees. It's impossible to know everyone. Maybe, but there was something about her. He trailed off. She said something odd as she was leaving. Something about umbrellas and rain. Elena's heart hammered so loudly she was sure he could hear it through the phone. What's odd about that? It rains constantly in this city. It's exactly what you said to me last night, almost word for word. The silence stretched between them, taut as a wire. Julian, Elena said carefully, are you suggesting that some random archivist is secretly your mysterious midnight caller? It sounds crazy when you say it out loud. It sounds crazy because it is crazy. The woman in your elevator is a real person with a real job and presumably a real life. I'm a voice on a phone line. We're not the same thing. Then who are you? Someone who doesn't exist in your daylight world. Someone who can only be honest with you because you can't see my face and I can't see yours. That's what makes this work, Julian. The anonymity, the safety of being truly unknown. He sighed. I know. It's just, I spend my whole life surrounded by people who want something from me. Money, power, access, connections. You're the only person who's ever talked to me like I'm just me. I want to know who you are. You do know who I am, better than anyone else in the world, probably. You know my thoughts, my opinions, my stupid jokes at 2 in the morning. You know the things I'm afraid of and the things I believe in. Isn't that more important than what my face looks like? A long pause, then quietly, yes, I suppose it is. But Elena could hear the frustration beneath his acceptance. Julian Thorne was a man who solved problems, who pursued answers until he found them. His willingness to let her remain a mystery wouldn't last forever. She changed the subject, asking about the acquisition he'd put on hold. The conversation shifted to safer ground, corporate strategy, financial forensics, the growing evidence that Marcus Sterling was not the ally Julian had believed him to be. But in the back of her mind, a clock had started ticking. The crisis came 6 weeks later. Elena was running a routine backup when she stumbled across the file labeled Project Aftermath. It was hidden deep in the legacy system, buried under layers of obsolete directories that no one had accessed in years. Marcus had clearly assumed it was safe there, forgotten in the digital graveyard that only Elena knew how to navigate. The contents made her blood run cold. Systematic fraud stretching back nearly 2 years. Fake invoices, phantom contracts, money siphoned from the Clara Thorne Foundation into shell companies that ultimately led to accounts in the Cayman Islands. Hundreds of millions of dollars stolen from the charitable foundation that Clara had built to honor her legacy, funneled into Marcus Sterling's private empire. But it was worse than simple theft. The digital trail had been crafted with precision, designed to point back to Julian. Forged signatures, falsified authorization codes, emails that appeared to come from Julian's private account but bore the telltale signs of sophisticated spoofing. Marcus wasn't just stealing. He was building a case to destroy the man who trusted him. Elena found the timeline buried in a folder marked Contingency, board meeting scheduled for Friday. Emergency session to address concerns about leadership stability. Marcus would present his evidence, the carefully curated evidence that painted Julian as a thief and a fraud. The board would have no choice but to act. Julian would be removed, probably arrested, his reputation destroyed beyond repair. Friday was 2 days away. Elena's hands shook as she copied the files to a secure drive. This was it, The moment she had dreaded from the beginning. To save Julian, she would have to reveal herself. There was no other way. He needed to see this evidence, needed to understand what Marcus was planning. And the only person who could give it to him was the ghost in his basement. That night when the phone rang, Elena didn't answer. She couldn't. Not through the filter, not with the comfortable distance of their ritual. This conversation needed to happen face to face, or as close to it as she could manage. Instead, she typed a message on his private terminal, the one he thought only he could access. Julian, don't go to the board meeting on Friday. There's something you need to see first. Come to basement level 4, server room 7, tomorrow at 8 p.m. Come alone, tell no one. This is not a trap. This is me finally being honest with you. Echo. She stared at the words for a long moment, then pressed send. There was no going back now. Julian arrived at 7:52 p.m. Elena heard the elevator chime, heard his footsteps echoing through the empty server room, heard him pause at the threshold of her small corner of the world. Hello? His voice bounced off the walls of humming machines. Echo, are you here? She stepped out from behind the rack of servers. Durers, no longer hiding, no longer filtered through digital disguise. Just Elena Vance, archivist, nobody. The invisible woman from the elevator who had somehow become the most important person in his life. Julian stopped dead. You, the woman with Clara's pen, the one who knew about the rain. Me. Elena's voice came out steady despite the earthquake inside her. I'm sorry for the deception. I never meant for any of this to happen. Your Echo. It wasn't a question. His eyes searched her face, connecting the voice he knew so intimately with the features he barely glimpsed. All this time you were right here, in my building, in my company, in your basement, maintaining the systems everyone else forgot about. She managed a small smile, hiding in plain sight. Why the word? The question held 1,000 others. Why the mystery? Why the filter? Why did you answer that call in the first place? Elena took a breath. The truth was now or never. Because I've been in love with you for 3 years. Since the day I saw you with Clara at a company event. Before the accident. Before everything fell apart. I watched you love her and I thought, that's the kind of man worth believing in. Someone who looks at another person like they're the whole world. Julian stood motionless, processing. After Clara died, I watched you disappear into yourself. I watched you become harder, colder, more alone. And I couldn't do anything about it because I was nobody. A ghost in the basement, someone you would never notice. Tears burned in her eyes, but she forced herself to continue. Then that night, your birthday, I intercepted your call by accident. Some glitch in the old systems routed it through my diagnostic port. And I heard you, Julian. Really heard you. The real you underneath all the armor. And I couldn't let you drown alone, even if it meant risking everything. You could have revealed yourself at any time, Julian said slowly. What was I supposed to say? Hello, Mr. Thorne. I'm the invisible woman from basement level 4, and I've been obsessively devoted to you since before your wife died. That's not exactly a conversation starter. A ghost of a smile crossed his face, the first genuine smile she'd ever seen in person. These last 6 weeks, the conversations we've had, they've been the most honest connection I've experienced since Clara. Maybe more honest than anything I've ever had, because you saw me, Elena. You saw me when I was falling apart, and you didn't run. He reached out and took her hand. His fingers were warm, steady, real. I don't know what this is between us. I don't know if it's love or gratitude or some strange alchemy of 2 lonely people finding each other in the dark. But I know that I can't face what's coming without you. Will you help me? Elena looked at their joined hands, then up at his face, the face she'd studied from a distance for years, now close enough to touch. I already have, she said. Everything you need is on that drive. Financial records, email forensics, the whole trail of Marcus's fraud. But Julian, we only have 36 hours before the board meeting. We have to move fast. Then let's move. His grip tightened on her fingers, together. The next 36 hours passed in a blur of preparation. They worked through the night in Elena's basement sanctuary, building a case that no board could ignore. Julian read through the financial documents while Elena walked him through the digital forensics. The metadata that proved emails had been spoofed, the server logs that traced money through shell companies, the timestamps that showed Marcus systematically building his frame job over months. At 3 a.m., Julian leaned back in his chair and rubbed his eyes. I trusted him, he said quietly. After Clara died, Marcus was the one who held things together. He handled the funeral arrangements, the board communications, all the public relations I couldn't face. I thought he was my friend. He was never your friend. Elena handed him a cup of coffee, the good stuff from her private stash. He was an opportunist who saw your grief as a window, a chance to position himself as indispensable while slowly taking control of everything you built. How did I not see it? Because you were drowning, Julian. And when you're underwater, you can't always tell if the hand reaching toward you is trying to pull you up or push you deeper. He looked at her with an expression she couldn't quite read. And you? What were you trying to do? Keep you breathing. That's all. Keep you breathing until you could save yourself. Julian set down his coffee and stood. For a moment, Elena thought he was going to leave. Regroup, rest, prepare for the battle ahead. Instead, he crossed to where she sat and knelt beside her chair. I spent 3 years thinking I would never feel anything real again, he said. Thinking Clara took the last of my capacity for connection when she died. And then you answered a phone that wasn't supposed to ring, and everything changed. Julian, let me finish. He took her hands in both of his. I don't know what comes after tomorrow. I don't know if we'll save the company or if Marcus will find some way to destroy everything. But I know that whatever happens, I don't want to face it without you. Not as Echo, not as some anonymous voice in the darkness. As you, Elena Vance, the woman who saw me when no one else did. Elena felt tears slipping down her cheeks again. She'd cried more in the past 2 days than in the past 2 years. You barely know me, she whispered. The real me, the daylight me. I'm awkward at parties and terrible at small talk. I'm not Clara. Clara was extraordinary, Patrona Julian agreed. And I loved her with everything I had. But Clara is gone, and I'm still here. And for the first time in 3 years, I feel like that might be okay. He lifted her hand and pressed it gently to his chest, over his heart. I'm not ready for rings. Not yet. There's still healing to do, for both of us. But I want you to know that I see you, that I choose you, that whatever time I have left, I want to spend it learning who we can be together. Through her tears, Elena smiled. I thought you'd never ask. The board meeting convened at 10 a.m. on Friday morning. The conference room on floor 88 had been designed to intimidate, all steel and glass and gravity. 12 board members sat around the polished table, their faces masks of corporate neutrality. Marcus Sterling stood at the head of the room, his presentation already loaded on the massive screens that dominated the far wall. Ladies and gentlemen, Marcus began, thank you for attending this emergency session. I understand this is unusual, but the evidence I'm about to present demands immediate action. He clicked to the first slide, a summary of financial irregularities carefully curated to paint Julian as the architect of massive fraud. Over the past 18 months, substantial funds have been diverted from the Clara Thorne Foundation into unauthorized accounts. The documentation trail points directly to our CEO's private authorization codes. I'm afraid we're looking at embezzlement on a scale that would destroy this company's reputation. The door swung open. Julian walked in, composed and immaculate in a charcoal suit that showed no trace of the sleepless night he'd endured. Beside him, carrying a slim laptop case, walked Elena Vance, the ghost from the basement, stepping into the light for the first time. Marcus's composure flickered. Julian, you shouldn't be here. Shouldn't I? Julian took his seat at the head of the table directly across from Marcus. My company, my board meeting, please continue. I'm fascinated to see where this presentation goes. Marcus's eyes darted to Elena, clearly trying to place her. Who is this? This is Elena Vance, Julian said. She manages our legacy systems. You might not recognize her. She keeps a low profile, but she has a remarkable talent for finding things that other people want to stay buried. The board members exchanged uncertain glances. This was not how the meeting was supposed to go. Marcus recovered quickly. Julian, I understand this must be difficult to face, but the evidence speaks for itself. If you'll let me continue. Actually, well, Elena said, her voice calm and clear, I think I'll continue from here. She opened her laptop and connected it to the conference room display. The screens flickered, and Marcus's carefully constructed presentation vanished, replaced by a different kind of evidence entirely. What you're looking at now, Elena explained, is a complete forensic analysis of the fraud Mr. Sterling was about to attribute to Julian Thorne, the money trail, the fake authorizations, the shell companies, all of it. She began walking through the data, the same presentation she and Julian had built in the basement, but expanded with additional documentation she'd pulled from Marcus's own files. The room fell silent as the true picture emerged, not Julian stealing from Clara's foundation, but Marcus systematically looting it while building an elaborate frame job. The authorization codes that appear to be Julian's were generated using a cryptographic key that Mr. Sterling obtained by accessing Julian's personal laptop during a company retreat 18 months ago. I have server logs showing the exact moment of access. Marcus's face had gone pale. This is ridiculous. You can't just... The shell companies trace back to accounts in the Cayman Islands opened under aliases that connect to Mr. Sterling's personal attorney. I have the banking records. Those were obtained illegally. They were obtained through legitimate forensic processes that any regulatory body will recognize. Elena's voice remained steady. But the most damning evidence is this. She clicked to the final file. An audio recording began playing through the conference room speakers. Marcus's voice, clear and unmistakable. Julian's too weak to lead this company. He's been a ghost since his wife died. All I'm doing is accelerating the inevitable. By the time the board realizes what's happening, I'll have everything in place. The old fool will take the blame, and I'll step in to save the company I've been running anyway for the past 2 years. The recording ended. Silence filled the room like water rising in a tank. Marcus opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. No words came out. Julian stood slowly. I think we've heard enough. Board members, I trust you'll handle this appropriately. Mr. Sterling's access to all company systems should be terminated immediately. I'll expect a full investigation and appropriate legal action. 2 security guards appeared at the door. Elena had arranged for them to be standing by. Marcus Sterling, Julian said quietly, I trusted you. After Clara died, I leaned on you when I couldn't stand on my own. And you used that trust to try to destroy me. Marcus finally found his voice. You don't understand. The company was stagnating. You were stagnating. Someone had to take control. Someone did. Julian's eyes moved to Elena. Just not the person you expected. As security escorted Marcus from the room, Elena felt the accumulated tension of weeks finally begin to release. It was over. They had won. But Julian wasn't finished. Board members, he continued, I want you to meet the woman who saved this company. Elena Vance has been working in our legacy systems department for 3 years. In that time, she's maintained the digital infrastructure that everyone else forgot existed. She's also demonstrated analytical capabilities that would make her an asset anywhere in this organization. He paused and something shifted in his expression, something warmer, more personal. Effective immediately, I'm creating a new position. Director of Strategic Intelligence. I need someone who can see what others miss. Someone who isn't afraid to dig into the systems that everyone assumes are safe. Someone who will tell me the truth even when it's uncomfortable. He looked directly at Elena, if she'll accept it. Elena felt every eye in the room turn toward her. 3 years of invisibility ended in a single moment. I accept, she said simply. And somewhere in the building's basement, the old phone line hummed with static that sounded almost like approval. The rooftop terrace of Thorn Tower was empty when they reached it. The morning's drama had scattered the usual lunch crowd. Elena stood at the railing, watching the city spread out beneath them, still processing everything that had happened. Julian came to stand beside her, close enough that their shoulders almost touched. Thank you, he said, for everything. For answering a call you should have ignored. For keeping me sane when I was falling apart. For saving my company from my own blindness. You saved your company, Elena replied. I just helped you see what was already there. That's not nothing. That's everything. He turned to face her. Elena, I meant what I said last night. I want to know you, the real you. Not Echo, not the voice in the darkness. The woman who's been brave enough to love someone from the shadows for 3 years. I'm not particularly interested in the daylight. She smiled despite herself. I like old computers and bad coffee and staying up too late reading technical manuals. I'm awkward at parties and terrible at small talk. I'm not Clara. Clara was extraordinary, Julian agreed, and I loved her with everything I had. But Clara's gone and I'm still here, and for the first time in 3 years, I feel like that might be okay. He reached out and tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, a gesture so intimate it made her breath catch. You're not ordinary, Elena. You're the person who saw me when I couldn't see myself. There's nothing ordinary about that. Elena felt the last of her walls beginning to crumble. 3 years of loving from a distance, And now here he was, close enough to touch, looking at her like she was something worth seeing. I don't know how to do this, she admitted. Be visible. Be known. I've been hiding for so long, I'm not sure I remember how to be real. Then we'll figure it out together. Julian took her hand, the same way he had in the basement, but different now. Lighter. Full of possibility instead of desperation. No more filters, no more darkness, just two people trying to remember how to be human. He leaned forward and pressed his lips to her forehead, a kiss that promised nothing and everything at the same time. Dinner tonight, he asked. There's a small Italian place in the old district. It's quiet, no one will bother us. Elena agreed, on one condition. Name it. You have to tell me about Clara, not the grief, not the loss. The good parts, the way she laughed, the things she loved, the reasons you fell for her. I want to know the woman who made you who you are. Julian's eyes glistened, but his smile was real. That might take more than one dinner. Then we'll have more than one dinner. Elena squeezed his hand. We have time. Behind them, the sun broke through the clouds, flooding the rooftop with light. The city stretched out below them. Millions of lives, millions of stories, millions of connections waiting to be made. And in the basement of Thorn Tower, the old phone line sat silent, its purpose finally, completely, beautifully fulfilled. 6 months later, the Clara Thorne Foundation Gala was the social event of the season. Vanguard's elite filled the grand ballroom of the Whitmore Hotel, champagne flowing, diamonds glittering, the air thick with the mingled scent of expensive perfume and barely concealed ambition. Elena stood near the edge of the crowd, still not entirely comfortable in the spotlight that her new position demanded. The emerald dress Julian had insisted on buying her felt like a costume, beautiful but not quite hers. She'd come a long way from the basement, but some habits died hard. You're hiding again. Julian appeared beside her, 2 glasses of champagne in hand. I thought we agreed, no more invisible woman. I'm not hiding. I'm strategically observing. She accepted the glass with a smile. There's a difference. Is that so? Absolutely. Hiding would be in the server room with a cup of cold coffee. This is high-level reconnaissance. Julian laughed. That real laugh she'd first heard through a phone line, now so familiar it felt like home. In the 6 months since the board meeting, everything had changed. The investigation into Marcus Sterling had revealed the full extent of his schemes, resulting in criminal charges that would keep him occupied for years. Thorne Industries had emerged stronger, its reputation burnished by Julian's decisive handling of the crisis. The Clara Thorne Foundation had been rebuilt from the ground up, its mission renewed. And Elena had found something she'd never expected, a place in the daylight. The Director of Strategic Intelligence position had evolved into something larger, a combination of forensic analysis, corporate strategy, and increasingly partnership with Julian in running the company that Clara had helped build. They worked together during the days and spent their evenings learning each other, the small details that phone calls couldn't capture, the textures of daily life that only proximity revealed. It wasn't a fairy tale. There were difficult conversations, moments of doubt, the inevitable friction of 2 strong personalities learning to orbit each other. Julian still carried his grief like a second skin, and Elena still struggled with the exposure that came with being seen. But they were building something real, something that grew stronger with each passing day. Ladies and gentlemen, the foundation director took the stage, commanding the room's attention. It's my honor to introduce the evening's host, Julian Thorne, and his partner, Elena Vance. Elena's heart skipped. She still wasn't used to being introduced in the same breath as Julian, but his hand found hers, steady and warm, and together they walked toward the stage. 3 years ago, Julian began, his voice carrying through the silent room, I lost the woman who taught me that success means nothing without purpose. Clara Thorne believed that we have a responsibility to use our gifts in service of something larger than ourselves. After she died, I forgot that lesson. I lost myself in grief and let others take advantage of my weakness. His grip on Elena's hand tightened. I'm standing here today because someone reminded me who I used to be. Someone who saw me at my worst and believed I could be better. Someone who risked everything to pull me back from the edge. He turned to face Elena directly. Clara used to say that the universe sends us what we need, if we're brave enough to receive it. I didn't believe her. I thought I was too broken to be saved. But the universe is stubborn, and sometimes salvation comes from the most unexpected places. The room was utterly silent. Elena felt tears threatening to spill, but she held his gaze. Elena Vance saved my company. She saved my legacy. But more importantly, she saved me. And I want everyone here tonight to know that the future of the Clara Thorne Foundation and the future of Thorne Industries will be built on the foundation of a partnership I never expected to find. He lifted her hand and pressed it to his heart, the same gesture he had made in the basement all those months ago. To Clara, who taught me how to love, and to Elena, who taught me that it's possible to learn again. The applause that followed was thunderous, but Elena barely heard it. All she could see was Julian's face. All she could feel was his hand holding hers. All she could think was how strange and wonderful it was that a wrong number could lead to so much right. Later, when the speeches were over and the dancing had begun, they escaped to a quiet balcony overlooking the city lights, the same city Elena had watched from her basement window for 3 years, dreaming of a connection she never expected to find. "I have something for you," Julian said, pulling a small box from his jacket pocket. "I've been waiting for the right moment." Elena's breath caught. "Julian, we don't have to." "It's not what you think." He smiled at her panic. "Open it." Inside the box, nestled in velvet, was an antique watch, small and elegant, its face marked with Roman numerals, its band worn smooth by decades of use. "It was Clara's," Julian explained. "Her grandmother gave it to her on her wedding day. Clara used to say that time is the most precious gift we can give each other, that every moment we choose to spend with someone is a declaration of love." He lifted the watch from its box and carefully fastened it around Elena's wrist. "I'm not ready for rings, not yet. There's still healing to do for both of us. But I wanted you to have this. I promise that I see you, that I choose you, that whatever time I have left, I want to spend it learning who we can be together." Elena looked down at the watch, feeling the weight of history and hope it carried. "I don't know how to deserve this," she whispered. "You already do." Julian lifted her chin, bringing her eyes to his. "You deserved it the moment you answered a phone call you should have ignored. You deserved it when you chose compassion over protocol. You deserved it when you loved someone who couldn't love you back and kept loving even when it hurt." He leaned down and kissed her, not on the forehead this time, but fully, completely, with all the feeling he'd been holding back. When they finally broke apart, Elena was crying and laughing at the same time. "I spent 3 years being invisible," she said, "watching you from the shadows, convinced that was all I would ever have. And now," she looked out at the city, then back at the man who had somehow become her whole world. "Now I think maybe the shadows were just where I needed to wait until you were ready, until we were both ready." Julian pulled her close, and they stood together on the balcony, watching the lights of Vanguard twinkle below them like 1,000 possibilities waiting to unfold. And somewhere in the basement of Thorne Tower, the old phone line sat silent, its purpose finally, completely, beautifully fulfilled. Thank you for staying till the end of this beautiful journey. If this story touched your heart, please like and subscribe to our channel for more captivating tales every day. Your support means everything to us.